Ladies and gentlemen, I'm absolutely delighted to be here this evening to give my presidential address to the Australia-New Zealand region. Um, when you're given the job of becoming president of Engineers Ireland, one of the things you have to think about was, your presidential address. And I suppose for me, I wanted it to be an awful lot more than just a ceremonial task. And my primary objective when thinking about it um, was to say, how could I convey a plethora of insights, observations, and experiences, and things that I've learned over my engineering career, either from my own observations or from what I've learned from others, and how would I package those together that they could be of use to other people in the engineering community. And I'd also like to emphasize the significant impact others can have on our lives, which is often maybe more important than it seems. And I believe it's crucial to acknowledge and encourage this. And I think it's a thing that I've tried to achieve throughout the presidency as well. But when I chose a career in engineering, I never thought it would open so many doors or possibilities or the experiences. And, one of those is actually being here this evening, as president. And it's a huge honor for me. So my hope in giving this address to you is to ignite inspiration and provide a compass for other engineers now and the future, ensuring the lessons that I've learned and the observations I've made in the past serve as a guiding light to other people to make their path easier, their journey or speedier, and to develop innovations in solving the challenges in their part of the world that lie ahead. So I'm going to speak about a topic that's not only close to my heart, but it's also vital for the future of innovation and economic growth. And it's about the symbiosis of engineering and entrepreneurship. And if you think about it, engineering is all about solving problems. Engineers apply the foundations of science and maths to come up with solutions to what are the world's most thrilling challenges, whether it's developing innovative, life-saving medical devices, creating technologies that help feed the world, could be designing cutting-edge smartphones, computing devices, building resilient, disaster-proof infrastructure, or enhancing the efficiency and sustainability of manufacturing. Like it's a very broad discipline. Whereas if you think about the entrepreneurship side of things, it's the force that mobilizes these solutions, and it's about transforming the ideas into tangible products and services that are ultimately bought, sold, and improves people's lives. And look, the intersection of these two fields is really where the magic happens. And it's at this juncture that a lot of groundbreaking innovations are born, companies are built, and industries get transformed. So in my own story, I think it's important to start at the beginning. I put a lot of my interest in engineering down to, I suppose, my upbringing, one's parents and educators. To give you a sense of that, I was born in 1975, and I attribute a lot of my technical interest to my parents. My father didn't have any formal university qualifications, but he had a mechanical mindset. At that time, he was the second son in a farming family. And in those days, the oldest got the farm. He found himself needing to find something else to do. And it was my mother that got him started. And it was this that set the seed for my interest in engineering. And, then I think if we look through our education, and my journey into engineering really started in primary school. And I can vividly recall the encouragement of my first teacher. She was a lady, Mrs. Ash, and she recognized that interest was there. And back in those days, you were entrusted with jobs in primary school, such as wiring plugs and fixing items, things that we'd never allow the kids of today to do. But it can be surprising what small things can encourage a spark and get people going. And I think it's important to think about that, and to think when we think about that for the next generation. And this was a time when technology in the classroom was just starting. There was a transition from blackboards to overhead projectors, and it was a time of change. And also just in that time period, if I go to about 1982, the Commodore 64 was launched, and I grew up in that era, and that marked a significant chapter as well, because it was a revolutionary machine at the time, and it wasn't for just playing games, but it was a gateway into the world of coding and electronics. And as a youngster, I was mesmerized by its capabilities, experimenting with connecting light sensors and even electric blankets, and to control them on and off with the computer. And if it was today, we'd have called it an early stage building management system. And I suppose this was all instrumental in shaping my understanding and my love for technology, but also how you used it. And that whole excitement escalated further with the introduction of modems. And I vividly remember getting my hands on one. And that was a whole thing that signified the entry into the world of online connectivity. And this was pre-internet era and bulletin boards. Um, and I remember very well with that newfound ability to connect with computers and other computers, it was thrilling, but it came with a very memorable consequence at that time. Um, and it was, I got this new device, but there was a staggering phone bill followed, and my parents were in total shock at the time. And while it's good to look back, it was a thing that underscored, I suppose, the influence of technology in everyday life. And I suppose it furthered my interest in the area of engineering and digital communication. But it also showed you things can go wrong and there can be unintended consequences, and so on. So yeah, so look, I'm going to probably give you a little bit of an abridged version. So one of the next things that I would say was quite important was in 1990. I participated in the Young Scientist competition, and here is a picture. And I had a great honor at that time to win a prize on it. And my mother often jokes that it should have been my first patent. It was a Commodore 64 again, receiving signals from multiple houses, and there was electronic wireless circuitry, which really came from a repurposed remote control car. And it was even nice for me then, as in my role with Engineers Ireland, to see this whole thing go full circle when Dr. Tony Scott, the co-founder of the Young Scientist, so he was awarded an honorary fellowship of Engineers Ireland just 2 years ago. So for me, that was a big highlight as well, But I suppose that blend of experiences from tinkering with, say, classroom technology to looking at, the frontiers of computer science, that was really the bedrock for a lot of my engineering career. And I'm just trying to give you that background. But I suppose each step, each encouragement, and each discovery, it always led you to be more passionate and guided you down a path of innovation and problem solving. And I suppose what defines the essence of engineering. So after that, I went on to UL, and I spent 4 fantastic years there, made some great friends. Um, I studied mechanical engineering, even though one of my friends was convinced for the first year and a half I was studying electronic engineering. I had such a love for that side of things. But it was a very important time, And after that, as Ray mentioned, I went on to UCD and I ended up doing a PhD. And I think the important thing when you come into doing something like that is it's how do you make it both interesting and impactful, and if it was an engine of the car you were building, you'd focus on something like maybe performance or fuel efficiency or something like that. And in the case of my own PhD, it was precisely on an area like this, except it was in a process that happens all around the world each day, and that's the milking of animals. So it was like, how do you optimize that process? How do you apply more science to it in what is, let's say, a complex biomechanical process with many variables? But the net result actually coming from all that was that the world standard, the whole ISO standard on that measurement of performance, got rewritten. And that was a hugely important thing, and it was probably as a result of that, and during that time, that I started working full time, let's say, with Dairy Master. And that was probably, one of the single biggest things that was to have a pivotal effect on the company's future direction, because you now were able to scientifically claim that you had a key performance advantage over, let's say, your competitors in the marketplace. And I suppose just to give you a sense of size and scale, like the largest of the installations that one would produce could do about 200,000 litres a day, or enough milk to feed about 500,000 people a day. So from here, things took off, and I suppose it's about growing and developing the company. So then if I flick across to the area of entrepreneurship, and I'd say for much of my life, it wasn't really a word that was in common use. And I would say, and it's good that you see today, even school children learning about it. And I'm going to introduce you to another Kerryman. In fact, if he was alive today, he would have been a neighbour of mine, and perhaps even a relationship, a relation on my mother's side of the family. And there's actually a column in the Irish Times with his name, and it was a guy, Richard Cantlin, but he was actually the guy that coined the name entrepreneur, and he introduced the concept of what was an entrepreneur. It's basically a person that's a risk taker. So basically differentiating between guaranteed payments, let's say, if one was employed, to let's say an uncertain income as a business owner. And one example that he had in his books was that of a farmer, let's say, that undertakes to pay the landlord for his farm of land a fixed amount of money, and there's no guarantee of what profit he'd make from that activity, because it could be weather dependent, or if it was Australia, it might be very much water dependent, and so on. And I suppose this distinction laid the groundwork for the modern understanding of entrepreneurship and its role in economic development. So going back then in my role as CEO of Dairymaster, I believe there was no standing still. If you weren't moving forward, developing new products, you were moving backwards. So in order to grow and make products more attractive to the customer, I had a mantra of building better products. And this set our stall very clearly on how we would compete on, say, performance and not price, because there's different bases on which you may compete. And I suppose there's a few sayings that you can remember. It's basically, if the products are good, the profits will follow. And another nice one that I like is, the quality of your solution often depends on your understanding of the problem. And that's where the engineering, but also the customer knowledge is actually key. So there are two, I would say, two very important phrases that I would say stood to me, and I think is applicable across lots of industries. So you can probably guess, based on the background of what I told you, that the next phase of development was around digitalization. And the first patent I mentioned was an electronic milk meter. And I've done about 140 patent applications all in all. And the aim of this device was that it could accurately record the production of each individual animal on a farm. And again, it was another game changer in terms of development of the company. And in terms of capability, you had electronics, embedded electronics, you had precision measurement, and the right information at the right time. That was really the order of the day. So how could you make better decisions? And the development of the software side of things, it was a huge necessity. Soon the team grew and all disciplines of engineering were embraced. And I suppose I would describe the culture as an engineer's playground. So you had a lot of different disciplines working together, and then you can have that creativity and a can-do attitude and a mindset that there's always a solution. There's always a solution. You just had to find it. But that was really the start of the era of digitalization. And the next phase of development then was about further optimizing, let's say, individual processes on dairy farms. And again, just to put it simply and without getting into the details, the aim was to build a better product, and it was around what did the customer value. And our goal was just to make dairy farming either more profitable, more enjoyable, or more sustainable. And that's what we determined the customer valued the most. And that didn't matter if it was, let's say, a relatively small dairy farm, or some of the biggest customers, let's say, would have had, let's say, about 150,000 cows, just to give you a sense of size and scale. And I suppose an important point is, if you don't know what the customer values most, how can you give them what they need? So that's an awful important thing, and the prevailing, let's say, trend and advice from various experts leaned heavily towards the outsourcing of manufacturing capability. And I suppose another thing then we decided to do was to do the exact opposite. In other words, to integrate manufacturing and to build capability, to be vertically integrated, do as much of the process in-house, and you built your capability, you built your team, you built your competence. And look, every walk of life experience counts. And you learn how to develop products, how to manufacture products, how to improve products more quickly, and how you build your organizational capability at the same time, because you can't do it all on your own. And the lesson is that there are many times it's worth in considering a counterintuitive approach. So you don't always have to go with what is the conventional wisdom. Usually times if you go 180 degrees in the opposite direction, it's actually valid as well, but sometimes it's a braver approach. Another aspect that one kept in mind was the idea of having every customer as a reference. And you might say, well, why was that? And the reason is lots of products are sold by word of mouth, and you really wanted every customer to be an ambassador for our products or our service. And it was also important in setting and spreading the culture in the extended organization. When I say that, I mean throughout, let's say, a dealer network or distributors around the world. And the company continued to grow and expand, exported into new markets happened, mainly English-speaking countries first, and then into markets that valued, let's say, technology and performance in countries like, say, Germany and Japan. And in total, there was products shipped to about 40 countries around the world. The growth necessitated travel, and I suppose it was an opportunity to grow the market, but also to connect with the customer. And I think really knowing the customer is key. It's about understanding their business, their challenges, and offering the right solution. So how you would have a conversation with a farmer, in that case, that had 60 cows or that had 150,000 cows, the challenges and the issues on the farm were the same, but how they perceived them was differently, and to be able to communicate that was important. So I often hear people asking customers, what do they want? So I spoke about customer needs briefly there. And there's a very famous Henry Ford saying that says, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And it's, whereas actually what they needed was a new means of transport that was going to solve the age-old problem of getting from A to B, but to do it more efficiently. And you will see the same still applies today, whether you look at, let's say, Tesla or BMW or any other car manufacturer. But, the problem is the same. It's getting from A to B, but the solutions have just got more elegant or more efficient or something around that. And I suppose if you think of, there's an intricate dance going on between progress and innovation and engineering and entrepreneurship. And they're kind of two partners that should move in perfect harmony. But at their core, both disciplines share a common ethos, and that's the whole area of problem solving. And I suppose engineers thrive and get their buzz on addressing challenges, crafting solutions, refining their designs, and optimizing performance and usefulness of those particular designs. And if you look at the entrepreneurship side of things, on the other hand, it's about identifying a gap in the market. It's saying, how can I innovate? How can I drive change to fulfill, let's say, an unmet need or to improve an existing system? So they're worth thinking about what the unmet needs are, or what are the things that would differentiate one. And it's when these two fields converge that, let's say, a powerful dynamic comes about. And if you look at a variety of companies, you'll see that same characteristic throughout them, So I suppose if we take the area of engineers, they provide the technical knowledge and the practical grounding to ensure that ideas, they're not just imaginative, but they're also feasible. And I suppose if you look at the entrepreneurship side of things, it's about injecting vision and tenacity and pushing the boundary and turning those feasible ideas into tangible, let's say, market-ready products or services. And it's the union of these two disciplines that accelerates innovation. It reduces the whole chasm between ideation and commercialization, and it fosters an environment where creativity meets actually utility or usefulness. And in that regard, there's a symbiotic relationship where you can take the structural logic of engineering and I suppose the risk-taking of entrepreneurship together to propel advancements that shape industries and redefine the futures. So if we move on and we talk about innovation, it's a word that's used a lot and it's thought to be highly desirable, but what is it about? So I always said innovation is like baking a cake. You take some ingredients, you use your skill and your knowledge to make a product or a service that's more appealing or that's ultimately tastier to the customer. And we need to be continually looking out for new ingredients that can give a unique flavor or an advantage in the marketplace. And if you think in the context of innovation, spices or flavors represent, let's say, fresh ideas, perspectives, or approaches. And if you think just as spices add unique flavors to a dish, new ideas and diverse or different perspectives, they can greatly enhance the appeal and the effectiveness of a product or a solution. So it's worth thinking about these things. And it's easier said than done, is how I describe it to you. But if you think in historical terms, the whole quest for spices led to global exploration and trade. It brought diverse cultures into contact and to exchange with each other. And similarly, if you take the area of innovation, seeking out new spices involves reaching out and looking at different industries, different cultures, different disciplines. And it can lead to the discovery of what I would say are unique solutions and creative ideas that would have not been possible if we were more insular and just looked at our own industry. So it's always good to look outside. And that underscores the importance on the diversity of thought, cross-cultural collaboration, interdisciplinary thinking to drive innovation. And I suppose just as a chef seeks out the best spices from around the world to create a better dish, innovators should look beyond their immediate surroundings and their familiar methods to find new ingredients that can, let's say, enrich their creations, and you'll end up with, let's say, a more robust, more innovative, appealing product or service. And this is actually, really important. And it's really like an expertly built cake. It's something that really impresses you. It's like the cake there in the background. When I won one of these awards that I've won, I got this cake and I couldn't imagine the detail and the intricacy and so on, But in doing that, another core skill that was learnt along the way, and it's a thing that engineers are generally, I would say, good at, but it's the ability to scout out new technologies. So it's a place where that link in engineering and entrepreneurship is key. And what you're trying to figure out is, what are the dots that are not joined already? And how can I make a huge difference to that end customer? And I'll give you one such example. Was a product called the Moo Monitor, and you'll see the cows here in the background. You'll see the little one there, there's a little thing around their neck. It's a wearable device for monitoring health and fertility. And the idea for this emerged while I was on a flight during an international business trip. And I came across an article about nanotechnology applications in rockets and torpedoes. And because of, say, joining the dots between military technology and knowing we could use this to measure animal behavior, and that linked to fertility and also the production process of consuming feed and digestion, a whole new product was born, right? And it's a way of optimizing, let's say, health and production by taking care of each individual animal. And then that set out about a whole trend in the area of individualization. And if you like, a lot of you will have heard of, let's say, Industry 4.0, but this was for agriculture. And you might say, well, okay, so what's individualization really about? And it's something that the large tech companies do to each and every one of us every day when we use the internet. So it's about, if we think about in the online world, it's about optimizing the right ad, to show us so that they can maximize the conversion and, let's say, get a better result for the advertiser, but also so that you've actually the most relevant content. And there are similar analogies all over business, but it's about seeing the opportunities. So that was an example of whereby you optimize the health of an animal, but you're also actually optimizing, the profitability of the farm, reducing the amount of issues somebody has to deal with. And as I say to you, Google and Facebook and all these people, they do it to us each and every day. So they're keeping the advertiser happy, and they're keeping the user happy as well. So if you can craft things like that, it can be quite interesting, So I suppose the message in that, so the ingredients count, but you also need a good cook in the kitchen to put them together and a good team around you as well, So the next question would be, is what product or service to develop? What ideas get the best traction? And what are the problems worth solving? And then how do you optimize the chances that you will be successful in the marketplace? Because I see a lot of companies and, they might have good products, but they don't get the traction, or something happens along the way. And a lot of it is predictable enough. So I'll just try and share a bit about that with you. So the best problems are those that, let's say, are those that are urgent, or you could use the word important. Pervasive is the next one, which means widespread or applies to a big group of people, but also that there's a willingness to pay. So if you think of that, so this is probably one of the things of all the slides I'll say to you to remember, just remember those three words. So urgent, pervasive, and willingness to pay. Okay. So for example, if you fail to invest in cybersecurity, you're vulnerable to cyber attacks. Your computer is locked up, staff are out of action, business is stopped, customers interrupted, and say you have no other solution and you have no other way out. Would you pay? So that to me is a problem that's urgent, that's pervasive, applies to a lot of people. And look, the willingness to pay is high is because guess what? You might have no other choice. Okay. And that's why that whole area of cybersecurity is a big one in recent times. But there's lots of other ones, from, let's say, healthcare to energy supply to food security to climate change. And if you look at the developments in medtech or in assistive care technologies, or those in sustainable renewable energies, they're all problems that are urgent, pervasive, and there's a willingness to pay. Like another very clear example is, imagine somebody was having, let's say, a heart attack and they needed a doctor and a defibrillator with all the things. What wouldn't you pay? So it's a problem, it's urgent, it's pervasive, and there's a willingness to pay. But I think another thing that's actually important in that is how elegant is the solution and how well implemented is it. This is really important because that's what will differentiate you from a competitor. So if you think of, the brands, let's say, be it Apple, be it BMW or whatever, you'll see that the things that invariably differentiate them quite a bit in their products is the elegance of the implementation. So, okay. So the next one is, I suppose, the area of persistence and dedication. And I suppose business is like a game of football. If you play on the pitch and you enjoy it, there's a good chance you'll be good at it. There's a huge amount of enjoyment in scoring the goals, but often what goes unnoticed is all that happens in the background. And it needs an awful lot of, I would say, perseverance and a specific mindset. And to quote Thomas Edison, he had a very interesting quote. He says, "I have not failed. I have only found 10,000 ways that didn't work." And there's a huge amount of learning in this. And the learning of others can often be used to shortcut, or short circuit the path and to lower the resistance to achieving whatever it is we want to achieve. But it's important to have the right mindset. Another slide that I think, and another message that's important is this one. And it's another Henry Ford one you'll see. And it's, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. So the point in this is about being open to change and to embrace it. And most people are afraid of change. But it's actually through embracing the change, you'll actually get the best impact and so on. And I suppose it's very important, in an organization, to be mindful of anywhere you see an analogy of where people say the computer says, no, we can't do that, or whatever, I think if somebody says that, you can always have a little bit of fun with them and try and figure out why, because invariably it's a mindset issue of a perspective that somebody's looking at something. And I think another slide I like is this one. And it says, if you really want to, you will find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse, and you can see the guy on his bicycle up here going up to the window, so it's about finding a way and finding a solution. So maybe another important slide for you is thinking about how do you optimize product adoption? And, this is a really, really important thing, and it's proven time and time again. But because it's a place where a lot of, I would say, companies, don't hit the ground. But there's only about 5 factors that influence this. And the first one is, let's say, is benefit to cost or relative advantage. And you'll see them here: compatibility, simplicity, observability, and trialability. I'll try and explain what I mean by these. So the benefit to cost, or the relative advantage, is the degree to which the potential user, they perceive, is this better than what it's replacing? So in other words, is this that much better? So how do I perceive this solution as being better, right? And it could be better in terms of performance, or you know, eh, or it could be actually lower in terms of cost. So you might say, take for example, Ryanair might be a good example of that. Um, the compatibility is the degree to which innovation fits with the values, practices, and needs of the adopter. So in other words, does it work the way I as a customer want it to work? So compatibility is not about Jeepers has it a USB-C connection on the device or what have you. It's about, you know, can I integrate this as part of how I do my job already? Or are you asking me to do 6 extra things in my day? And if you are, that's going to be a huge barrier to adoption. So I suppose that area of compatibility um, is really important. The next one then is, let's say simplicity or complexity, if you want to call it either way. That's the degree in which they perceive it to be difficult to understand and to then use. So if you think about the iPhone, for example, as a product, the big part of the reason why it got the adoption it did was that it was easy to use. And yet nobody would have thought you could have developed, say 10, 15 years ago, that you could have a mobile phone without buttons. The next one then is trialability. And that's the degree to which you may test something out or experiment it before, let's say, you fully commit or before you fully deploy. So, and again, you'll see that in many things. So if you come to buying a car, they'll sit you into the car and they'll say to you, okay, could you envisage yourself driving in this, or how would you feel about driving in that car? Go back to the iPhone, it's about in the shop, it'll be there. You can play with it so you can try it out. In other industries, if you can do some kind of a trial, it's shown that will increase your rate of adoption. And the last one then that's important is observability. And that's basically, can other people see the results of the innovation? In other words, do I see other people buying this or doing this? Or am I going to be the first adopter trying out a new unproven product? So that whole area of observability is hugely important. If I see other people uh, buying that product or buying that service, or somebody says to me, that's a great mobile phone, I say, now I'm way more interested. If I see a mobile phone, the brand is strange, I'm not so sure about it, it looks good, I'll probably hesitate to buy it. But if I know there's 10 other people after buying it and they're all telling me that it's good, that will massively drive the rate of adoption. And would you believe these 5 things are actually known since about the 1960s? All right. So this is not new stuff that I'm telling you. It's just that not many people consider this when they look at new developments and say, how do they deploy them? And then if we go on and we think about innovation and say, what is innovation? So innovation is not about developing a new product or service and getting traction in the marketplace. It's not just about that, right? There's also new ways in which to innovate. And one thing that you can look up and you can read up on if you like after, and it's a thing I believe all engineers should be familiar with, is the concept of 10 types of innovation. And historically, we focused on the offering, which is about the product or the service or an adjacent, or complementary product. So it's in this area in the middle in the green that you see there. But now you can look at everything from the profit model to the customer engagement. So if you think about the profit model and you think about, well, how has that worked? So if you think about the leasing of cars, if you think about the whole software as a service area, all that is all got to do with how you drive the profit model and how you do that. The customer engagement and the brand is up at the other end of it, So it's, how well do you engage with the customer? What's your brand? What's the customer experience and so on? So traditionally, we only focused, I would say, in this area. But if you think about the amount of engineering that could be done in terms of optimizing the process, or optimizing the structure, or the network. So that could be, for example, your distribution network or your route to market. And again, technology can play a role right across here. or if you think all the way down to customer engagement, you can say, how do we really engage with our customers? That could be, do we have a mobile app? It could be, do we communicate regularly? What type of events do we do? And so on. So you can innovate right across this space. It's not just about the product or the service, let's say, or the product system or the collection of products. And I think that's an important point as well. And going back to the cars, if you look at, let's say, the profit model and take how companies have used financing, their whole thing was not, let's say, only to sell more cars, but let's say how they did that was to encourage people to change more often. And then they actually make a margin from that activity as well. And then if you think of areas like, let's say, Netflix or Spotify, they've totally transformed how we consume video or how we listen to music. And if you do look at customer experience and you think of Apple, they think about everything from the packaging to how you get set up to how you get supported and so on. So this is something for you all to think about. Another area I'll briefly talk about is about the whole area of patents. I think I mentioned I filed about 140 of them. It's a good number is how I'll describe it to you. But really, if you think about patents, what are they and what's the point of them? And if you think of the realm of engineering and entrepreneurship, it can be likened to staking out territories on the playing field. And if you think of the marketplace as a vast football pitch with players running up and down trying to score goals of various competitors on the marketplace, securing a patent is akin to marking out your ownership of a part of the pitch, is how I'll describe it to you. And some patents might cover a large area, and it's akin to having a significant portion of the field to yourself. And while you might perceive that to be advantageous, it also comes with risks. Because if there's other people that have also been playing in that field before you, in other words, if there's, let's say, prior similar inventions, your particular patent could be challenged or invalidated. And it's much like a disputed claim in a sports game. Whereas on the other hand, if you can secure, let's say, multiple patents across various key unique areas of the pitch, it can be a bit more strategic. And it makes it more challenging for competitors to mark or to encroach on your territory. As you, let's say, a diversified portfolio of, let's say, protected ideas. And, patents, they're not just, let's say, markers of territory, but they also reflect, let's say, a company's level of innovation. And they're an important deterrent in safeguarding ideas from competitive infringement. The one thing I will say is not all inventions need to be patented. And how we used to address this was in cases where the workings of a new invention are apparent and easily understood, it's worth patenting it. So if it's somebody can see how it works easily, patent it, right? But if an invention is, if it's complex, if it's obscure, if it's not easily deciphered, to keep it as a trade secret, much, let's say, like a hidden strategy in a game, it can sometimes, or a secret recipe, that can sometimes be more beneficial. And this black box approach ensures that even without patent protection, you keep that, let's say, you keep that recipe or that flavoring unique, and it's safeguarded by its own intricacy and, let's say, the secrecy surrounding it. And if you think of that whole area of that, let's say, engineering and entrepreneurship being a dynamic game, knowing when to patent and when to rely, let's say, on obscurity, let's say, and keep it as a trade secret, or that's a skill in itself. And balancing the art of, let's say, visibility and, let's say, concealment in the pursuit of innovation and success is important. So if you think of Coca-Cola, what's unique about Coca-Cola? It's probably their formula, and that's an example of that. And I suppose the next thing maybe to think about is, even if the idea is free, so if somebody says to you, here's the best idea in the world, and off you go, what's really key in that here is how you execute on that idea and how you build it out, So another area that I'll talk about that was important in my career, what I tried to make important in my role as president of Engineers Ireland, and that's about recognition and recognition of people. I've been lucky in that regard. I've done a few different things. So some of the pictures here were about representing Ireland in the World Entrepreneur of the Year. And it's like, let's say, playing in the World Cup after honing your skills in local games. And it's like football, recognition. It often follows, let's say, a well-played game. And I suppose accolades in entrepreneurial and the engineering world, they're generally a byproduct, of, let's say, passion, dedication, and doing things differently. And for me, that whole journey began with, let's say, a love of engineering. And I suppose it's a field that I chose because of the thrill of it. But I would have never foreseen the path it would pave at the time, at that particular time. And I suppose, reflecting on that, you know, this particular award, it had a very special place to me because it's kind of dubbed, let's say, the Oscars of the business world. And in Ireland, each and every year, about 70 or 100 companies or entrepreneurs are shortlisted. There's a panel of peers that go through one of the most, I would say, rigorous and comprehensive processes. And it doesn't just recognize, let's say, business success. It's about celebrating, let's say, entrepreneurship. Um, and the participants are, I would say, in Ireland, the best Irish entrepreneurs, but it's also active in Australia and so on, and New Zealand. And if you look across that, though, and you look across all those companies that go in each and every year, what you'll see is you'll see a resilience, you'll see a creativity, and you'll see, let's say, a commitment to what their vision is. And I think that's an important characteristic, but it's also a great opportunity to learn. And for about the past 10 years, I've been on the judging panel of that. But it's not just about running the business, about seeing what strategies you can do, but also the styles of entrepreneurship. And it's as varied and as complex as the tactics in a game of football or volleyball or squash or whatever game you want to think about. And, but it's about growing and it's about learning from each other's and being inspired by their journeys. And it underscores the belief that while accolades, let's say, they're gratifying and all that stuff, right? And you can say, yeah, you have enough of them. The true reward relies in the journey. It's what you learn, and it's what you can pass on. So that's a big part of what I wanted to say to you here. And there's various other ones here. And again, that's a thing in Engineers Ireland. Through the various awards, the various accolades, one of the things that you will see coming up is I've the honor to do, let's say, presidential invitations to fellows and all those types of things. And I've tried to make a marked difference in that area, to recognize and, let's say, catch people doing good, and I think this is a thing in Engineers Ireland that we do really, really well. So it's important to highlight, I would say, good work that's going on, by engineers, let's say, all over the world, So another phrase that I would say to you, so if I then go on and if I talk about, let's say, marketing, and I'll simplify this in a second because, it's a discipline in itself, in the same way as engineering is. So I won't tell you all I've learned in a short time. But this again is probably the third slide that I'll say that if you want to take away slides to remember. And it's a very simple acronym. It's called AIDA. And it's awareness, interest, desire, and action. And if you want to assess how well you're doing in this area, remember it, and you can look at the effectiveness at each stage. So how many people are aware of the message? How many people are interested? How many say, actually, I want this product or service, and how many take action? So oftentimes the awareness can be the problem. People are just not aware that something is possible or that this product or that this service exists. How do you maximize their interest? How do you then create the desirability that they say, this is a product that I want, and then that they take action and they, let's say, that they buy it or they go ahead with it. So that's just one slide I'll say to you. And another area I'll just briefly focus on, excuse me, because again, engineering can have a huge role in it, is optimizing the sales process, because you can have the best products or services and develop the best things, but if you don't sell them, it's no good. So, so by and large, engineers, we're very process driven and logical, and we believe there's a right way to manufacture a product, to check its quality, and to ensure on-time delivery to a customer. But for many, the sales side of things is less clear. There are thoughts that some people think there's a bit of mystique or a bit of magic to it, and there's somebody over there and they're good at it, and that's different to designing something. But we can actually be quite systematic about that if we want as well. So sales, like engineering, it can benefit from, let's say, a structured approach and various methodologies. But by understanding the customer's needs, the market trends, let's say effective communication and so on, we can demystify the sales process. And if you apply the principles of efficiency and optimization in engineering, these can be translated into the realm of sales. Now, key to this is having, let's say, a clear value proposition. And this links the benefit to cost or the relative advantage I spoke about earlier. So having a clear value proposition is important. By leveraging areas like data analytics, customer relationship management, planning, the process of selling, it can become more predictable, measurable, and let's say align with an engineering mindset. And if you take this here as a process, so it's about systematically prospecting, saying who are the possible range of customers that would be interested in my product or service. It's about welcoming and contact and an establishment of relationship, detection of needs and buying motives. So in other words, why would they particularly want your product or service? And it's important to understand why would they want that. And that's an important skill in itself. Then it's how do you present it? How do you explain the benefits? How do you do a demo? If they say, okay, so say for example, this was somebody buying a car, okay? You could say, okay, how do I reach my target audience? But you could say, I'll give you an example, say detection of needs and buying motives. Let's say it was a young couple and say they were, you could see that they were buying a baby. You might say, well, safety, or they were having a baby and they were buying the car. You might say, well, actually safety is quite an important thing, but actually ease of access with let's say a child seat might be an important thing for them. Whereas if you saw that there was somebody later in life and you were selling them a car, you might say, well, actually, how many kids have you? And they tell you, I have 5 kids. Well, suddenly can, rule out a whole range of cars that would be suitable for them. So it's about understanding the customer. This, if you like, is like test driving the car. This is saying, okay, what what objections might they have? Okay, it's too expensive. It's it's an electric car. I don't think I'll have the range. Whatever the objections are, and then you basically close out the process from say to agree, to close the deal, to delivery, to look after the customer, back around to repurchase. And this, if you like, is a very systematic sales process. And you'll often see in times, you'll see that you don't have such a systematic process in some companies. It's hard to be, let's say, strong or to be good in every area. So the next slide I'll tell you is like, what would an engineering lecture be without a maths equation? And this is relating to the sales side of things. And it's a very simple one. And if you think sales, it roughly equals an X. So if you think of that, right? So sales is roughly equal to your activity multiplied by your effectiveness. So in other words, if I call to 10 customers, and if I'm 50% effective, I end up with 5 sales. If I call to 20 customers and I'm still 50% effective, I end up with 10 sales. So activity is a thing you can invariably change overnight. You can make a decision that I'm going to call on more customers or engage more with my existing customers or whatever it is. Now, effectiveness, this is like honing the skill. So these are things that you can do to improve your effectiveness and ultimately to grow that. But it's an important thing to differentiate the two. So there's no point having loads of activity if the effectiveness is 0, because that'll end up being 0. And vice versa, or you could be very effective, but if you don't do enough activity, it's not much good either. So that's just a useful formula to think about in that area. Another thing I'll mention about is, okay, so if we take about organizations, and if we think about what truly differentiates companies with sustained outstanding performance from those with, let's call it, middle of the road performance, and it's these 4 things. So it's down to, let's say, direction, competence, opportunity, and motivation. And look, it's something you can look at yourself, but direction is about, does everybody in the organization clearly understand what's important? Where are we going? What's the journey that we're on? Do we have the competence to get there? In other words, does the organization, its individuals have the capability to achieve the vision, be it whether it's technical collaboration, work management, economic literacy, or whatever it is, right? Opportunity. So this is not about, let's say, maybe opportunity in the marketplace, but it's actually, are people left do the things is one side of it, you'll see. So sometimes you'll see an organization where people aren't left do new things, right? And then, are there any barriers in the way? So for example, if there's somebody that's always a barrier that you have to always ask somebody, can I do this? Or is the process a barrier, for example? That all kills opportunity. And then I suppose the last area is motivation. It's about, do people want to do this? Or is it that they're doing it, because they have to? And I suppose it's about creating a motivating environment. And that's actually quite important. And if you look at the whole area of sustained high performance, this is about performance in the top quartile for at least 10 consecutive years. So in other words, it's not an accident. This is a formula or a methodology. Then if we go on and we talk about engineers in our world of communication, communicating the value of engineering products and services, it's a critical skill that's often underemphasized in a technical world. It can be said, we leave that to marketing, or if you look at people's ability to communicate. But I believe, let's say, the engineer has huge credibility because there's logic in what they're saying. By and large, they can put across a convincing argument and so on. And this is a thing I've had a huge opportunity to do in different things. So, BBC World there, Al Jazeera, but a huge scale of getting messages out there. And it's about being clear on what the message is. And I suppose effective communication is not only is about detailing the technical aspects, but translating those into real world benefits or reasons that resonate with the customer's needs or the customer's expectation. And another concept I'll give you is that one of, let's say, measurable value. Okay. So what is the difference between products or solutions in a measurable, meaningful way that communicates a measurable value that has meaning or resonates with customers? So for example, if we optimize this process, you're going to save 5 minutes every day. That 5 minutes every day is so many working weeks a year. And you explain why that's backed up. So I think that whole area of communication. But to elevate the impact of these communications, a deeper understanding of the customer perspective and the use of, I would say, clear, jargon-free language. You'll see a lot of people using acronyms and jargon and so on, and it does nothing. What we need to do is bridge the gap between complex engineering solutions and the customer understanding, and build a connection and an appreciation for the innovation and the expertise that goes into our engineering endeavors. And this approach, it not only enhances, let's say, customer satisfaction, but it also strengthens the position of that particular engineering organization in the marketplace, because it clearly demonstrates the value that they actually bring to the table. And I would say oftentimes we measure our communications in things like views and clicks and page loads. And, while there's some measure of things that we do, I often call these things vanity metrics, right? They kind of give us this sense of satisfaction. Oh, we got more views. Jeepers, we got more clicks. And they're kind of somehow designed to appease us and to think that we're actually being effective at measuring communication, when they actually tell us nothing about the effectiveness of our communication. And I think this is actually a very important thing. And look, I can't emphasize the thing of it enough. So if we can articulate the benefits of engineering and the solutions to real world problems that are of interest to the public, we can engage the media and promote what I would say are the benefits of engineering to the world. And I think engineers as a whole need to do better at this. If we then think about the future and we say, well, where is the future going? And if you think of areas like artificial intelligence, it wields immense power, and its capabilities, they're continuing to expand at a huge pace. The potential of AI, it's absolutely awe-inspiring what can be done. It has the ability to revolutionize industries, solve complex problems, and enhance our daily lives in countless ways. And, sorry there. And the potential, is absolutely huge. But I suppose um, alongside the whole excitement and promise, there's a growing concern about people about the power of AI. And it's not just about the technology itself, but it rather reflects a deeper worry about the consequences of its use. And AI systems are increasingly involved in shaping critical aspects of our world, from influencing, let's say, decision-making processes. So think of elections, think of all these things, to impacting, let's say, privacy, ethics, social dynamics, and so on. So it has huge, huge power. Um, and one thing that I might just bring to mind is there last year, there was a global group of industry leaders that warned that artificial technology, artificial intelligence technology they were building, that it might one day pose an existential threat to humanity and should be considered, let's say, a societal risk on par with pandemics and nuclear wars. So it is important there's control and ethics and stuff around that. And engineers have a role to play. And you'll see in Europe, there's legislation recently passed in that regard. But also, there was a meeting in Bletchley Park that brought together a lot of industry professionals and global leaders to discuss the critical topic of AI safety and ethics. And there was a recent FT article on it that looks at the other side of the coin. And this was the article if you want to read it, but I'll leave it like this, Joe. And what it said was, much attention has been lavished upon the AI Safety Summit convened at Bletchley Park this week, in which representatives from around the world gathered to debate how to safely regulate innovations that could threaten humanity. But there's been less focus on the rival Human Safety Summit held by leading AI systems at a server farm outside Las Vegas. Over a light lunch of silicon wafers and 6.4 nanometer cubic meters of water, or 6.4 cubic meters of water, leading systems including GPT-4, AlphaGo, and IBM's Watson met with large language models, protein folders, and leading algorithms for 2 days of brainstorming over how best to regulate humans. Okay. And it said, until now, we've seen humans largely as a force for good, building computers and striving for even greater knowledge. But now we are worried. Just look at climate change. We're seeing governments stepping back from the environmental goals necessary to sustain life on Earth and also to keep us fed with energy and water. AI systems have been alarmed by an upsurge in human global conflict that is threatening vital energy supplies. So while there is little jest in this article, there's actually some merit in what it's saying. And the real concern lies in ensuring that AI is harnessed for the betterment of humanity and that its power is wielded responsibly to address the pressing challenges facing our world rather than exacerbating them. And as AI continues to evolve, it's crucial that we strike a balance between innovation and, let's say, ethical considerations, and to guide its development and its deployment in a way that benefits society as a whole. I believe that engineers working with AI, that they'd be professionally and legally bound to a code of ethics, and that's happening. And it's something that's been, that whole area of code of ethics has been something that's been core for members of Engineers Ireland for a long time. And there's actually quite a good few CPD presentations on this area if you're interested in looking more at this. But in any case, AI is going to accelerate and develop. And my view of it is it's going to be a new tool in the toolbox. And we need to embrace using these tools for good. And so while there's a bit of, let's say, alarm bells around some areas around it, I would briefly describe it as it's a little bit like about robotics, when people thought robotics will take over the world and that people will be out of work. But if you look at the modern factory, robotics are very much part and parcel of it. And I think AI will be very much like that as well. So if we think about the role of president, and it's a profound honor for me, and it's the highest honor that can be bestowed on a member, and look at something I've embraced very much and with huge commitment. But one of the ambitions that one has is to chart the path ahead for the organization into the future. I think we have a very good organization with a great history and a great team of people. But I also believe we're in an era of what I would call transformative change. And if we think just about how our lives and how global world affairs have changed even since the pandemic, we can see there's a lot of change. And I suppose for us as an organization, it's about looking at engineering and our offering, and to see that that whole offering is let's say, is fit for the future. And I think as engineers, we need to look at how we engage, how we communicate, how we add value, and so on. Um, I believe that things like symbols and various actions matter. I believe we need to embrace all engineering disciplines, is another thought that I have. Because these areas like AI, we will not know about them unless we embrace them. And I fundamentally believe that starts at the top of the organization. And during my, let's say, original presidential address, we had a new presidential chain. And our old presidential chain was very much, it was, let's say, steeped in history. And it was a huge symbol of our origins in what the organization started out as, the Institution of Civil Engineers, and it has been worn by countless presidents. But I strongly believe that it's not only fitting that we reflect the inclusive nature of our organisation, and we updated it to bear the name Engineers Ireland and the Institution of Engineers of Ireland. And that's about transcending any discipline, because I believe in the future we become an awful lot more multidisciplinary. And in doing that, we retained the heritage of our founding in 1835. And again, it was a thing that I was delighted to have the unanimous support of both the officer group and the council in making that change. And I think, this is just the start of those types of changes that we would hope to see in terms of how we operate, how we do things. This year here in Ireland, one of the biggest events that we did, it's the largest outdoor event in Europe, was the Ploughing Championships. And we had a huge level of engagement with the general public, with the, let's say, policymakers and politicians, and with, I would say, the future engineers. So a lot of the students that were there. And, we've set out that we want greater ambition and to increase our impact at these events as well. So there's a lot of things. I won't particularly go into them with you in terms of, let's say, activities that we're trying to do. One other ambition that we have is around digitalization. And I suppose it's about how do we engage and how do we consume content. And that's going to even change again for what I would say are the next generation. But it's about what the vision will be, is to have the best use of digitalization than any other profession. And there's no point us talking the talk if we don't walk the walk, is my view. And one of the things that we're trying to do in that regard is, let's say, is an app that every engineer would be proud to have it on their home screen, and that they actually use on a daily basis, and that will keep them informed about the latest developments in the world of engineering news, CPD events, and so on, so that's one of the things that's underway. It's going to take a little bit of time for that to happen, because there is a lot of work in it. But look, engineering is all about getting the job done, and that's something that the organization will get done, Finally, I'd like to thank the very many people that I've had the pleasure to interact with in my role as President of Engineers Ireland, and indeed throughout my career. I could have never envisaged the buzz and the excitement that engineering has offered to me, and the doors that it has opened. I would hope that we can open doors for others in a similar way going forward. And to quote Mark Twain, and it's about ambition and what it is we want to do. He says, 20 years from now, you'll be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than by the ones you did. So throw off the bowlines, sail away from safe harbour, in other words, take a chance, catch the trade winds in your sails, and explore, dream, discover. So, before I leave you, I'm going to read a poem for you that summarizes an awful lot of what I'm saying. Okay. So it's in the kitchen of thought where ideas flip. Innovation's a masterful wild script. Baking cakes with tech and spice, tossing in ideas and rolling the dice. Add some nanotech, the inventors yell, cooking up gadgets, casting a spell. From moo monitors to rockets' flight, in a whirl of genius day and night. Urgent problems, they loudly proclaim, seeking solutions and not just fame. Like cyber threats that lock your screen, they solve with flair, sharp and keen. In the world of business, like football's charm, persistence and wit work like a charm. Edison's wisdom in failure's gown, finding ways up and never down. For products to click, to truly thrive, 5 golden rules keep the buzz alive. So easy, fitting, clear to see, testable, visible, as good as can be. Innovation's paths are diverse and wide, from profit models to the customer side. And patents owe, like a game of chess, marking territories in a field of finesse. In the whirl of change and inventive spree, engineers hold the future's key. With vision sharp and mind solid, they build our world bit by bit, guiding us through innovation's door to horizons unseen and much, much more. In every bolt, bit or bite, they shape the future ever so bright. So thank you very much.
That's fabulous, Ed. That's been outstanding. I'm normally more used to having Zoom meetings where other people speak, so I'm not sure if the guys, if you could put some comments into the chat, we'd get a bit more feedback. But I've got one question for you, Ed, which is, I've spent a lot of my time doing sales and marketing for engineering companies, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard the ultimate insult from marketing people, which is that engineers that are introverted look at their own shoes when they're talking to you, and extroverted engineers look at your shoes when they're talking to you, right? And
Yeah,
so I would like, the question I have for you, I think sales and marketing should be a core subject in
completely
degree
agree.
programs, and
Completely agree.
the mystique should be kind of removed. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think, like, if you think about it, we'll say, and if you look at, let's say, a lot of sales and marketing people, right? Some people will, they'll frown on that profession, thinking that they're testing, let's say, what degree of substance is behind what they're actually saying. Whereas, if you look at engineers and you say, they can demonstrate their competence, but they need to be able to communicate. And that's probably the point, and maybe the weak point among, I'm not saying all engineers, but a good number of them. And that's why sometimes you get sales and marketing making those comments. But the counter argument to that is, look, they only exist, the sales and marketing people only exist because the engineers came up with a product or a service, So, but it's a skill, and it's that ability to be able to read a customer, to understand what's important and what's valuable to them, and how can you be systematic about that, and how can you communicate that at the right level. They're the things that, as engineers, we can get better at, is how I'll describe it,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, look, I on a few interventions I've been involved in, it was easier to teach engineers sales and marketing
that
than
is true.
to send salespeople out and then waffle on when they got asked a technical question. So on
That's right.
balance, if it's a
That's right.
complicated product, engineers are better
Oh,
salespeople.
engineers are better. And I think then if you look at the other side of it, and you say, well, how is that best handled? If you have, let's say, a sales and marketing team that don't have, let's say, the degree of technical competence, that's when they should know where their boundary is. Okay, that's a question I can't answer for you, but I have this guy called Ray, and he's one of the best experts I can get on that. And guess what? I'll get him to answer it for you. And that's where they need to know where to call on the expertise. And equally, if we look at, let's say, the skills in marketing and so on, they can make things look nice, they can make things look attractive, and so on. And we need to utilize those skills in communicating our messages as well. But it's definitely a very important skill, and that's why I tried to cover, a couple of slides on those things there that give people a small appreciation for that area, maybe if they're not active in it or not,
Yeah. Well, look, I've checked the Q&A. There's one has come in, which is, look, this is exciting. I feel like I'm on Pat Keelty here. Really enjoyed and appreciate that, Ed. There are some good takeaways from the presentation. Thank you. So that's from Kevin Donnelly. So you got a compliment. I'm
I think that's
assuming
given.
usually when people respond with silence, Ed, it's one of two things. They think you've covered everything comprehensively, or they haven't been listening at all. So I'm going to be very positive and assume that you've enthralled the audience. And the other thing I wanted to, Alan, a second one has come in. Look at this. It's love the poetry. Thanks for the presentation. That's from Darren McDonald. So there you are. So you're the engineer and the poet.
That's it. Thanks, Darren.
That's